Welcome to the Truman Charities podcast. I am Jamie Truman, your host. Have you ever thought about what it might be like for someone who is visually impaired or a person with low vision? Keisha LaVett has been an educator for over 20 years. And when she had a student that was visually impaired, it opened her eyes to how people tend to treat individuals with disabilities differently. Keisha just published her second novel, Through Her Eyes. This story is about a young girl named Hope who is trying to navigate life while visually impaired. It's a fascinating book that takes an in-depth look into the life of someone growing up with a disability and trying to establish their own independence. I speak with Keisha about the student that inspired her to write Through Her Eyes, why she feels it's so important for children to be reading books whose main character is somebody with a disability, how she came up with the character Hope, and her plans to possibly make this a series. I hope you enjoyed this conversation with Keisha as much as I did. Thank you so much for coming on today and talking with us about your book, Through Her Eyes. Yes. And I want to hear a little bit about your story. This isn't actually your first project. Oh, there. I love it. Now we can see it. And I got my copy here.
Oh, wonderful.
Absolutely. And, this isn't your first project. You had another project in 2008, The Innocence of Love, and you've been an educator since, 2000.
I have.
So I want to know a
The
little
love
bit.
of my life.
I can tell through your books and all of your work that you've done. So tell us a little bit about your story and what kind of inspired you to create this book.
Well, I've always loved words. And I know this is going to sound really cliche, but Stevie Wonder is my favorite artist of all time. He just happens to be blind, and sight challenged. But much of what he had to say before I even knew, being young and hearing his music in, just with my parents and being introduced to his music, I I just fell in love with his ability to draw me in and to make me listen. And I was able to identify with a lot of what he had to say, but at the same time, I found myself within his words, and it was just remarkable. And then I found out that he was sight challenged. And then I found out that this was a blind man. And so I think that sparked something in me. And I've always wanted to do something like this. And that was one of the earlier inspirations. And then when I started teaching, inclusion is a big part of my role. It's a big part of my occupation. And so I'm a literacy teacher. And the one thing that we are required to do, and something that I'm passionate about doing, is making literature accessible to students and cultivating them so that they'll be lovers of books. But the more and more I inspire kids, the more and more I noticed that there were no books, well, barely any books that represented persons with disabilities, where the person with a disability was the main character, and so I had students, and I still have students with all types of challenges, and it's nice when I go back and reflect on my connection with Stevie Wonder and his verse, and I saw myself in some of his stories, his verse stories. I noticed that one of the reasons why I was able, things resonated, is because I saw myself, and I wanted that for students, for all students, all students. And I emphasize all.
And there was one thing I really did enjoy about the book, and that is the relationship that Hope has with her mother. And I could really understand kind of the struggles that she has, because I noticed, just being a mom in general, it seemed like she was always kind of in this tug of war of trying to protect her daughter because of her disability that she had, and then also trying to give her that independence that she so much wanted. And
Mhm.
there is a part in it when she was at the mall and she was with her best friend, and she really just didn't want to have her walking stick, and her mom freaked out and she's like, "I just want my independence. I want you to stop." But I could see, like, just stop hovering over me, but I can
Mhm.
understand that struggle, and it was a really beautiful relationship throughout the book with her and her mother. And I wanted to know, like, how did hope come about? Like, who is hope to you?
Well, I do see myself in Hope. I am my mother's only child, and she is my rock star. Love her. But she still is to this day very protective. So that lives out in the
I see it.
story. Yeah.
Yes.
Very. I'm her baby and I get it. And so I think that, well, I know that a lot of that was channeled into my creative process uh,
Yes.
because of my background. She wanted me to have the best. She always wanted me to be safe.
Mhm.
But I feel like I was very sheltered and I just wanted to live my life in such a way where I'm leaving a blueprint. Me,
Mhm.
guided by her, obviously, because of her mother with her wisdom, all of the things that she passed on. My love for stories, she passed on to me. She tells me stories even to this day, and I get so engrossed. But I wanted to leave my imprint on the world in some way.
Mhm.
Um, and so I'm a lot like Hope in that way, where
Mhm.
she wanted to tell her story, but she had no story
Right.
because all of her stories were surrounded by what people were either telling her or doing for her.
Mhm.
And so she yearned to want to do her own thing. And so I think that's that's where we sort of intersect,
Mhm.
she and I. So yeah.
And I wanted to talk a little bit. You had mentioned to me that you once had a student that was sight challenged. And tell me a little bit about that. What was that experience like? And did you channel any of that into the character of Hope?
Yes. So I had never had a student who was sight challenged. And I didn't meet this student until 2012. So I had been teaching in public schools for almost, for about 12 years.
Mhm.
And so, we have students with IEPs, students with learning disabilities, et cetera, students in wheelchairs, um, partially hearing impaired, but I'd never had a sight challenged student and I didn't know what to expect. So I was preparing the lessons, researching, getting the background I needed from his caseworker so that I can allow him to access the curriculum and learn. I wanted him to have a good experience. And so I was expecting it to be um, it's sort of a learning curve for me. And I was expecting me not to provide him with what he needed. I thought that I was going to be struggling to just teach him.
Mhm.
And then I met him and I went, oh my God, what a wonderful sense of humor he has, and how much of a self-advocate he was in helping me to support him. And, he would say, this is fun. Now this was back where we weren't using Chromebooks. So I had to go and enlarge all his materials for him when I was giving his assessments, or we had to read text. They had to be enlarged. So I had to do that. So that was prep for me. But, I remember like not enlarging it enough. And I remember him saying, oh, I'm fine. Oh, don't worry about it, Miss Wilson. That's my surname, Wilson, although my pen name is LaVett. But my students know me as Miss Wilson, and he would go, "Oh, Miss Wilson, I'm fine, no worries." I'm a boss, things like that. Oh, he was just so funny and so human. And I think that was the first time that I realized that ableism exists, and that mindset, that philosophy that has been ingrained in so many able-bodied people, that persons with disabilities are the other. They are the other that's struggling. They need so much help. They don't have a personality. They're just the part of the population that we need to help when we can. And that's it. We don't have conversations with these human beings. We don't invite them into our lives and enjoy them as human beings who happen to have physical challenges. We just don't do that. And so we forget the humanity that's embedded inside them. They're human beings. They like to have fun. They like to joke, They're just navigating the world in a different way. And that's it. And so he, and that experience really opened my eyes, and I always wanted to write something, but I just couldn't figure out what I wanted to do. And I'm sure since you've read the book, you notice how many human things I wanted Hope to encounter. I wanted it to be realistic, because although persons with disabilities are human beings, they do have the physical challenges, some of them, and navigating the world isn't easy. So I didn't want to make it easy for her either. This is definitely realistic fiction, but she's thriving and she's contributing to her society. Mm-hmm. And that's what we need to be thinking about when we encounter persons with disabilities. We need to live in a world of acceptance.
I do love, because you're telling this story about the student that you had, and it reminds me a lot of Hope throughout the book, just like very determined, strong-willed, funny, and very personable. So I can see some of the similarities throughout the book.
Yeah.
What would be one of the big takeaways that you would want someone to get from Through Her Eyes?
That othering is wrong. That othering is wrong, and that we all belong to this world. That's the biggest take. That acceptance is something that we all need. But we all need the opportunity to shine. And one of the quotes in the book is the naming of her nickname, Moon. Mm-hmm. And that she's different than anything in her space, like most people with disabilities. Different, that's all. That's all it is. But that she shines, she stands out. And that's the other thing, that's the other parallel to my student that I taught. He stood out, but he stood out in such great ways. He was the life of the class. Like, we all laughed at him. We all laughed with him. He always had something witty to say. And he was very personable. And so, and Hope, stands out. And one of the things that through my research, I realized that persons that are sight challenged or legally blind, they see more light than you think. So there's a lot of variations to blindness. And but her challenge provides a level of darkness. It just does. Her experiences, not being able to navigate the world like able-bodied people, brings about a level of darkness. Mm-hmm. So, and of course she sees shades. So she's somewhat in the dark, more in the dark than she is light. But she's shining through it. And so I want to say that whatever your challenge is, we're not identified by that. We want to shine through that. We want to grow through that. And we want to thrive and contribute to our world. That's the message. That's the message there. And that's exactly what she's doing, like a boss. Like she's she's a sassy pants lady.
She is. I liked it.
Yeah,
I liked it.
I wanted it to be funny, and I wanted her, like you said, I wanted her to be relatable and personable, but more importantly, Jamie, I wanted her to be human. I wanted her to be human. And that's the takeaway, that these are human beings.
You're an educator and you're an author and you've done all of this research. What would your advice be to parents to help their children be more compassionate and have more empathy for individuals with disabilities?
Yeah. So the one thing that was brought to her parents' attention in the text was that she needed to learn how to be independent. And so I strongly recommend that you don't do it for the student, but you show the student or the person. I'm sorry, I'm so used to being a teacher. You show I know, right? The student.
Always a teacher.
I know. I'm so used to having parent-teacher conferences. But anyway. But you show your child how to do it, how to be as independent as she can or he can, so that they can access the resources needed to navigate the world effectively and independently, as independent as they can be, so that they can become who they are supposed to become. Hope found, I don't want to spoil it, but I feel like
give her a teaser.
You're right, exactly. Without spoiling it, she became Hope. And her name is intentional. Her name is very intentional because her parents hoped that she would heal in some way. Of course, ultimately, they wanted her to gain her sight and be able to see. But the hope mainly was for her to live a good quality of life. And so she did. She did. Me from the outside looking in as an able-bodied person, I see the struggle. I see that it's hard. But are any of us living an easy life? We all have our challenges, but are we identified by our challenges? No, we're not. One of the things that is also helpful, and this is not just to parents, but when you see a person with a disability and you see them navigating the world, give them a name. Give them a human name. That's Madeline over there in your mind. And immediately you start to feel the connection, the human connection there, immediately, as soon as you give that person a name. Or that's Sam over there, that person in a wheelchair waiting for the light. That's Sam.
I do really like in the book in the beginning when they were speaking about when Hope was born and her eyes are swollen and they weren't sure what was going on. And you really see the parents kind of going through the process throughout the book of just first like devastated, what are we going to do? This isn't happening, to accepting it, acknowledging it, and then trying, as I had mentioned before, to give her that independence and that internal struggle. So there's so many things. Hope is the main character, but there's all this other dialogue within the family going on. That's so relatable because that's every family,
Mm-hmm.
right? There's
Yes.
always all kinds of different dynamics within relationships
Yes.
and challenges. And so you really see that throughout the book. It's, you see Hope's challenges with her best friend Angel, and then you see her challenges with her mom and her parents. It's really wonderfully written because it's so, as I said, like relatable. It's just it's fiction, but kind of not in a way. As you mentioned,
Yeah.
it's fiction, but not, right?
That's
Um,
great. That's great feedback for me because that's exactly what I was going for. I want it to be a real story
mhm.
that people can relate to. And so knowing that that's communicated well, thank you.
So tell me a little bit about writing this book. So what was, I think, your biggest challenge?
Wow. So many. Yeah, so many. Because I'm not sight challenged. Um, and so I literally I had to try to embody what I thought she would be going through and what that would look like. Being a teacher really helped, though. It really helped because I see it every day. Students who struggle with the different challenges, whether it be physical or learning disabilities, whatever the case may be, but I see other students and how they respond to them. And I'm in meetings and I notice how not all, but how some teachers are depicting the struggle. Um, and so I I had to channel that, but it wasn't easy. Like it was just so much revision. And I was like, that line is not true. I needed this to be realistic. I'm like, no, she would never say that. Or no, she's not going to walk up the stairs without holding on to the wall in the dark. Like, no, she wouldn't. Let me go back and let me rewrite that.
Mhm. Right.
Yeah, I needed readers to see the struggle.
Mhm.
Um, but in order for them to see the struggle, I had to paint the picture. And that was really hard because I am not a sight challenged individual.
Mhm.
And so one of the things that fans often ask me is like, how much research did you do? And how did you know? And how were you able to present her in the way that you did? And I'm a praying woman. I'm not afraid to share that. And so, I pray for guidance and, and I wanted to do this realistically and I wanted to do this well. So I did a lot of reading, a lot of observing. And I just wanted that to come clear and become clear, as a writer, um, and as a reader. One of the things that the publisher had me do was to not edit as I went along. So, part of my contract was that I get two reads, and then they can make changes, and then I get another read. So one of my reads, she said, I want you to read this book as a reader and not as a writer.
That's tough.
It
For
was
you,
very,
I'm sure it was tough.
I know. I was like, I want to change this.
Yeah.
I want to change that part, but I can't right now. I'm just reading it. And so that's another part that was hard. But I think just painting this portrait of this child who becomes a woman, um, a sight challenged woman, that was the hardest part.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was going to ask you, because I've seen that you've done a lot of book signings recently,
Yeah, I have.
and it looks like it's been a lot of fun.
Yes.
Um, so I kind of two parts to this. What has been the feedback that you've been getting from people that are coming to these signings and getting
Uh-huh.
and purchasing the book um and then also what do you have coming up?
Oh, okay. So, people are sharing their stories, and I'm learning about legislation that we still need to work on having to protect the caregivers of persons with disabilities. So I mentioned how, there are different variations, there are different challenges. And so, but even with Hope, she needed Mrs. Maverick to come in and teach her how to be independent. She needed her mother to protect her and to help her and to get her to the point where she can become independent. And so there are many caregivers out there who really need the support. They need resources. They're not equipped. Um, and oftentimes the resources aren't there from state to state. And that's what I was learning. And I was shocked because it's 2023. Well, now it's 2024, but at the time, right, it was 2023. And I was like, wow, really? And so I said, well, the more people are becoming aware, I'm hoping that we can change this. Mm-hmm. And that, we can get lobbyists to represent. One of the things in the book is that, Hope speaks in front of Congress, and so we need to do more of that. We need to go and we need to speak on behalf of any challenge. Mm-hmm. It needs to happen because there's so much discrimination that's going on. Ableism is just one of them.
It's interesting that you mentioned that because I've spoke with a lot of nonprofit founders and I was unaware. So I think a lot of people are just unaware, uneducated on the fact that they call it the cliff when they're out of school and a lot of children with disabilities, then all of those programs and everything that they have no longer exist. So you have all of these young adults and their caregivers not sure what to do because they're no longer available to them. And I did love when she talked to Congress. It was great. It was just like it was such you see the evolution of her from being a young girl to now this, young adult. And it was really, really beautiful. So
Thank you.
Before I let you go, is there anything that you would like to mention that we haven't talked about?
Oh, well, I think you asked what was next.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yes, no, that's fine. Oh my God, let me tell you, this is a passion of mine. I want to be a change agent. I didn't want to write without a purpose. And I know the overarching purpose for any good writer is to entertain, and to engross or to make people happy in some way with their words, right? Mm-hmm. But in my case, I wanted to do that, but I also wanted this novel to have a purpose. And so one of the things that I'm doing is I am continuing this quest against ableism. Every time a person buys this book, they're becoming more aware of the humanity that lives in persons with disabilities. So I'm combating this ableistic belief one book at a time. So I'm continuing on this journey with doing more interviews. Your interview number 1.
Oh, yay.
The next one is February 1st, Tacoma Radio. So I'll be there. So I just want to continue to just raise awareness. I want people to be mindful and join me in this fight because honestly, this is an easy fight. All you have to do is shift your mindset. And you can do that with one small thing. Name a person. Hey, that's Cindy over there. Even if you don't know them, but they become a person. Mm-hmm. And so that's what I'm doing now. I'm just going and I'm doing interviews and I'm raising awareness and I'm starting book 2. And so hope will live on, not just in name, but just in general.
Well, it's funny. I was going to ask you that because while I was reading the book and just so everyone knows, I mean, I read it quick, couldn't put it down. It was such a wonderful book. I mean, I think I read it in 2 days. So it was,
wow.
Yeah.
That's so great to hear. Really,
I wanted to see what was going on with her. And then I was going to ask her, I was like, you know what, this kind of seems like it would be a great series. So I don't know if you're up for it.
But I'm up for it. I'm up for it.
I think we would all love a sequel.
Oh, yes. And you're going to get it. You're
Okay.
definitely going to get it. It's coming. I'm working on it. I'm thinking about it. And so, yes, it will definitely be a series. Hope will continue on her journey. Um,
And then how can someone purchase Through Her Eyes? And
oh,
how can someone follow you? Because we want to know all of the wonderful opportunities. You're going to be on Tacoma Radio and all of these great things, but we want to follow you, be able to meet you, all that.
awesome. So first of all, you can go to Keisha LaVett, KeishaLaVett.com. And so you can check out my website and all the wonderful inspirational art and things that are being purchased and designed to get the word out about not only the story, but the inspiration behind the story. So those things are there on the website. You can follow me at Keisha LaVett Author on Instagram, TikTok. I'm also on Facebook. So you can follow my business page there. And yeah, and so we'll keep those things updated so that people can come out and see me and meet me and talk to me. I'd love to hear their stories. Tell me what I can do to help, because I know the power of speaking and the power of raising awareness. You're in the charity business, so you understand that.
Yes,
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah,
And, I want to make sure to everybody that, reviews are amazing. So please tell
yes.
Keisha how much you love the book. Make sure to leave that review on Amazon. It does go a long way.
It
So
does. And
please
they
make
can
sure
also purchase the book on Barnes and Noble .com, Books a Million,
on
Politics
all of
and
it.
yes, Politics and Prose is another big one. So yes, anywhere, just go online Through Her Eyes. Thank you so much for those of you who've read the book and who are supporting me. It means the world to me. I would be nothing without a reader.
Oh my gosh. Well, this has been so wonderful. And I loved the book. I hope everyone goes out to get it now. And Keisha, thank you so much for coming on again to speak with us about your amazing new book, Through Her Eyes.
You're welcome. You're welcome, Jamie.
Okay. If you liked this episode, please make sure to rate and review our podcast. That is how more people learn about the Truman Charities podcast and our organization. And to make sure you don't miss any of our future episodes, subscribe. If you'd like to follow Truman Charities, you can follow us on Facebook at Truman Charities, Instagram at Jamie_Truman Charities, and check out our website, trumancharities.com.